Hey, hello guys, how are you doing? This is Fede here back with another video. So today we're gonna, sorry about that, it's my phone. We're gonna do a quick reading wrap up for March, right? So March just ended yesterday, and I wanted to do a quick recap before doing any other sort of videos, right? So we're gonna go real quick. This was an okay month. I read 5 books, so that's pretty normal for me. 4, 5 books is usually what I read. Um, so I have the list here. First, I read a book that just got published. Actually, I'm going to go to the presentation of this book because the author, the writer, is a friend of mine. He wanted me to be at the presentation to say some words uh, on it. So the book it's in Spanish. So it is El Malestar del Cuento by Ulises Lavenant. He gave me this copy for review, so this is the one I'm going to be notating. I already read this, of course. These are short, 4 short stories, right? So 4 little stories about the writer focuses here more on his mother, his wife. It really focuses on the feminine figure on his life. And actually, I told Ulysses, I saw him last week, Saturday. I was giving a conference on cinema in an event, and he was there. And I told him, Ulysses, are you aware of the feminine influence in your stories and just the feminine figure? And he was like, "What? You're crazy. I wasn't writing that." And he was telling me that he was writing about himself and his own stories. But so that's pretty interesting, right? Whenever we, as the reader, find maybe some other message, some other values that a writer himself was not able to maybe find himself or was not aware himself of the themes of the book. So that's very interesting. And I'm going to talk more about that on the presentation day, which is, I believe, April 11th or April 9th. I still have to write my script, but yeah, it's pretty easy. Next, I finished, and this was a heavy book. This was not easy to finish. I finished River of Stars by Guy Gabriel Kay. So this book, if you haven't read this is sort of a sequel to Under Heaven by Gabriel Kay as well. So this second book takes place like 400 years after the first one. So it's not really a sequel. It's more of a story centered in the same world as the first one, right? Under Heaven. So here we have an alternate reality, sort of a alternate China story um, with emperors, Shaolin monks, heavenly horses, especially in the first one, right? But with different names as the real thing, And here, the only connection, like direct connection that affected the plot that I could find from Under Heaven was only one. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you what it says, but it gave me chills, when I read it. The book itself, River of Stars, I will say that Under Heaven is much, much, much better than this one, right? But this is still a good book, but okay, so Under Heaven, that's an empire at its highest point, right? Money everywhere, power everywhere. And River of Stars is more of the decline of an empire, right? What the empire does when it's fragmented itself from within itself, right? So it's pretty interesting. We have 2 main protagonists here: a woman who likes to do manly things like poetry, writing, all of that stuff, and a man who's sort of a Robin Hood figure, right, in this world. But on all, I will recommend this. Yes, if you're really into the first book, Under Heaven. I was really into Under Heaven, but you know, if you didn't like Under Heaven, why will you read this, right? But it's still pretty good. I mean, it's a Guy Gabriel Kay book. So there's that. Then I read, and these two next books, three next books, I read on my Kindle, right? So last month, I believe, yeah, the beginning of last month, the Booker Prize long list came up, right? So these are like 12, 13 books. And I'm going to do a video each month focusing on maybe two or three different books. So I'm not going to talk about these books a lot here, but I read two. I read When a Woman's Madness by Astrid Rummer. That's a republished book from the 80s, which is great. And also, I read A Leopard Skin Hat by Anne Sir. So, those two books, A Leopard Skin Hat, maybe not so much, but A Woman's Madness, that's great. And we're going to talk about those two in a future video. I'm going to record that video maybe tomorrow. And then I read also, okay, so this was a body read, right? In quotations, because a friend of mine wanted to read this book, right? I'm really not interested in reading these books. I have others on my list, but I was so fascinated by him telling me that he wanted to do a body read because he doesn't read, right? And I told him, all right, so the book is Metro 2033, right? The first book in the trilogy. And he told me, hey, do you want to read this with me? He received the trilogy as a gift from his wife, and he wanted to start reading it. And I said, all right, you know, let's go ahead and do one book a month because I know he doesn't read, and you know, I wanted to take it slow for him. So he agreed. We started on at the beginning of March. I started the book on the 20th of March, but you know, he reads pretty slow, so there's that. And I finished the book. The book was not really to my liking. It's a post-apocalyptic story set in Russia, right? So that sounded pretty interesting to me. The whole world was in a war, right? Nuclear war. So the humans are not able to live on the surface of the world. Sort of a silo setting, right? That's the same setting. Instead of a metro station, it's a silo. So the premise is similar there, but it's much better executed in silo than in metro. So metro, it was pretty boring to me. It wasn't bad, but it was boring. It had this long chapters about nothing. You know, it tries to philosophize a little bit, right? It tries to perform these ideas, but it really doesn't do much for me. Some of the themes, and this was written, well, this was published in 2002, but I don't know when it was written. So 10 years after the fall of the Soviet Union, right? So the themes are pretty connected to that period of history. You know, the perestroika, what ended the Soviet Union with Gorbachev and everything. So the theme for something deeper is there, right? The writer obviously lived this transition of his country, right? But it doesn't go deeper than that. You know, it's just people that it's old that one time lived in the Soviet Union and now they're living in the metro. There's a parallel there with pre-Soviet Union and post-Soviet Union society in Russia, right? That's what the writer tries to do, but it doesn't accomplish anything for me. There's some types of creatures as well. This sort of radiation immunoless fucking monsters, right? And they appear like maybe two, three times in the book, in the story, and it was fucking boring to me. And here's the kicker, right? So my friend, he told me to do the body read, right? I didn't want to read this book, and I said, all right. And by the end of the month, I told him, you know, Isaac, his name is Isaac. I told him, hey, I said, I'm done, man. I'm done with this fucking shitty book. Let's go ahead and talk about it. And he was just like, I didn't read it, man. I didn't have time and whatever, the excuses. And I was like, never in your life, my friend, invite me to another body read with you. And yeah, I knew he wasn't going to read it. I mean, he is this sort of a person. He's a great guy, by the way, but he's this sort of a person that gets excited about something and then just lives aside and goes on with his life. But yeah, that was the deal with him. So yeah, by the way, Metro 2033, don't read it. It's awful. Nothing happens really, and usually I'm okay with that, right? Because if nothing happens, then the book is more about the characters and the reflection of the life and the philosophy of the society that they're living in. But here, you just don't get it. You don't get that, right? There's a bit of reflection also on religion and the neo-Nazi movement and sort of I don't want to say a reflection even, it's just mention of it in the future. Okay, so there's a Nazi movement here, and there's a Catholic movement here, all right, that already exists and it will exist in the future. So what you're telling me, right? What do you want to say? I don't know, I just didn't like it. And just for what I'm reading right now, I'm reading, okay, let's go with this one first. I'm reading the book number 5, right, in the Dune series. So this is Heretics of Dune. This was a gift from a girlfriend that I used to have. So this one's in Spanish, right? And when I was in a bookstore. I don't remember the location, but it was downtown Tucson, and I believe I was going to the movie theater that day, but I was early, right? So I had some time to kill, and I went to the bookstore, and oh Jesus, I got a first edition of the book number 6 and final book in the Dune series, Chapter House. So yeah, I'm going to read this next in English, but this one I'm reading it in Spanish. Why am I mentioning this? Because the Spanish translation, especially in this book, because I read the first, second, and third book in Spanish as well, and they're okay. They're translated all right, but this translation and the grammar in this book is horrible, man. And this is by Penguin. This is Penguin Random House. But yeah, it's horrible. If you have the opportunity of reading this in English, do it, man, because you're going to be guessing some names, you're going to be guessing some locations, right? But yeah, let's talk about the story first. I'm not liking this book either, man. I don't know what's going on this month. Book number 5 centers in the post Leto II society, right? So post Emperor of Dune. It's like what? So okay, book number 4 of Dune is like 4,000 years after the first one, right? And book number 5 is like 1,000 years after, or not that much after Dune 4, but it doesn't matter because it's a new story, right? New characters. But it's a bit much for me because here Herbert, what he does is that we know the Bene Gesserit society, right? This society of women, mystical women that control politics, control sex, in the sense that they control who gets to be born and who doesn't, right? So that's interesting. The Bene Gesserit, the classical sense of the Bene Gesserit. But in this book, a new society is created, which I really don't know the English term because I'm not reading the book in English. I think I'm going to find out in the last book, Chapter House. But anyways, there's a new society of women, right? Like We got the Bene Gesserit, they're losing power, and we have this new society of in Spanish is Hermana Madre, which is Latin. So I don't know if it's like that in the English translation. But yeah, Herbert here, I believe he was like writing his fantasies, sort of, because this new society of women, they're so like sexualized. I have nothing against characters being sexualized for just the heck of it, right? Man, woman, whatever. If the writer wants that, it's all right. But Herbert, I mean, it's up to the reader, of course, to read the book or not. But what I'm saying is that I approve the liberty of the writer to do so. So here in this book, it's a little bit too much for me, because in this society, new society of women, everything is sexualized. I mean, their main thing is that they're so evolved that their pleasure is what comes first, against all, and they use that to control everyone. So sex is like their main thing, right? And the two protagonists that we have, one of them, from previous books, and you will know who it is. And then the other is a girl, new girl in the world, in the lore, right? And they're just trying to get it right again, in the sense of the Kwisatz Haderach, Lisa Nagaib. So I don't know. I'm not getting a lot from this book, Herbert here, and I loved. Let me tell you, I loved the first four books, even Emperor. I mean, I love those books. But here, Herbert is trying to is beginning to lost me a little bit. And of course, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish the last one, because that's all there is to do, right? I know his son writes books in the Dune universe, but I really don't care about that. I mean, I refuse to read anything from Dune that's not coming from Herbert himself, right? It's like if I will read something from A Song of Ice and Fire and it wasn't written by Martin, right? I just don't want to do that. I prefer to read an incomplete story than read it by someone else's hand. And lastly, this was going to be a short video, man, and it's already 18 minutes gone. I gotta go to work here in a bit. All right, now this one I started reading this like a week ago, so I'm slowly going through it. It's like I'm at like what 30% or so, 40. This is Tiempos de Swing. This is, I believe, the English name for this is Swing Times by Sadie Smith. So this was a great writer recommended to me. I mean, I've seen her recommended by other YouTubers, Sadie Smith. So she writes about. So the premise of this book is pretty interesting. I was thinking about it the other day because the premise, if you ever read the Quartet by Elena Ferrante, My Beautiful Friend Quartet, the Neapolitan novels. So the premise is a little bit like that there's two friends from two different types of family that take two different paths in life, and what's their relationship like, right? So it's fun, but for me, I mean, I'm up to page almost 200, right? And I'm just not feeling the story either. I don't know what's happening. But if you compare this book to Elena Ferrante's My Beautiful, a Brilliant Friend, I believe it's the correct translation. I mean, Elena Ferrante's book is up here and this one is down here, right? But it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, right? I'm just saying there's another story with this same premise that's superior to this one. And you should read that one first if you were attracted to the premise of this one. What's different about this is, of course, the context, right? The culture. So in Elena Ferrante's books, the culture is Italian, post Second World War, right? So that's very interesting in itself. And here, the context is African American, not African American, sorry, American Australian. I believe it's set in Australia. Um, yeah, I believe it's in Australia. I don't remember though right now. See how the story is. I don't even recall where it's set, but I know it's not in America because this is set in like the second part of the 20th century, so pretty recent times, right? If you think about it. And nothing much happens, man. It's just the story of so far, right? Because I haven't finished the book. So far, the story is just about the girls, and it deals with the story in flashbacks, which I didn't like so much for this story in particular, right? But it's keeping me going. I mean, I haven't DNF'd the book, and I don't think I'm gonna. I'm just going slowly through it, and the print in this book is not small, but it uses the entire page. You know, it's just like the entire page get used here up to the very bottom, and the margins all the way. So, for example, if you compare it to a book by this publisher, which is Alfaguara, you know, look at the pages, look at all this space there's here, and all the space there's here, right? And if you compare it to this one, all the pages get used. I don't know. So it's long. It's a long book. I don't know if I would recommend it. Ask me again once I finished. I'm gonna let you know what I think about this. So yeah, that's the video, guys. I'm gonna come back tomorrow with. I'm going to do either the Booker Prize book update, which I'm going to go through the entire list up until September, I believe. And then I'm going to talk about, I've been wanting to do this video for a long time, which is the books on the Wild West, right? The American West. I already wrote something like an article. So I'm going to take some ideas from there that I wrote and just to do the video real quick. I'm going to try and record a video almost every day now. I have the time. So here, I mean, I guess everywhere, right? Spring break's about to start, so I'm gonna have a couple of weeks off, and I need to do something with my time because if not, I go crazy, right? So, all right, guys, see you next time.